Things haven't quite clicked for Lewis Hamilton this year, as the W13 just isn't quick enough to compete against the mighty Red Bull. But if there's a track for him to spread his wings, it's the Hungaroring, cause he's got a knack for picking unexpected race wins there. That said, the 7-time world champion isn't ready to hedge his bets just yet. So, can the Brit end his winless streak? Let's find out. First off, why is a race win so important for Hamilton? It's been a strange session for Lewis Hamilton so far. Coming off the back of the insane Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, he was all fired up to have another go at Max Verstappen. Sadly, his team wasn't quite up to speed with the new regulations, and their season felt like it was over before it even begun. Of course, things have gotten better since then, and the German outfit has managed to wrap its head around W13's zero-pod design, but despite making massive gains during the latter half of the season, that top step of the podium continues to elude them. Now, you'd think that getting multiple podium finishes would be good enough for a team that was in utter disarray at the start of the season, and honestly it would be for most people. It's a whole other story if you're one of the most successful drivers in Formula 1 history though. So, naturally, the 7-time world champion just set the standard so high for himself that anything but a race win just doesn't cut it. After all, he's literally never had a winless season in the sport, which is a bonkers stat considering he's been racing for 15 years. As a matter of fact, he's the only driver in the sport's history to even have this record, making it even more important for him to continue his streak. Oh, and to be fair, he has come close in a couple of races like France where he got P2, so a win's definitely on the cards this season. Up next, the W13 isn't fast enough to compete against Red Bull. Now, judging by his history, Hamilton's almost always had a car that's good enough to win at least one race a season. Like, even when he made his debut with McLaren way back in 2007, the car was fast enough to challenge for the title. That said, what many people don't realize is the fact that he's had some bad cars over the years too. For instance, his 2009 ride was infamously slow and no one pipped it to even get a single podium at the start of that year. As time went on though, things started to click together for the Brit as he got his first race win at Hungaroring that year, but it's been over a decade since then and obviously things have changed a lot. For starters, Max Verstappen's in the form of his life and seems to squeeze race wins out of nothing. Oh, and don't get us wrong, we're not saying that the 7-time champion lost his mojo. In fact, if anything, he's still as quick as he's ever been, even at the age of 37. Having said that, the real issue arises when you look at where Mercedes is in terms of the pecking order. And if you actually compare the raw pace numbers, then you'll realize they slot right into third, with the drivers getting P5 and P6, so they've actually overperformed getting so many podiums this season. Besides, if you go back and watch the races, every single podium has come off the back of a Ferrari or Red Bull failure. What's more, Hamilton doesn't want to set unrealistic expectations. Of course, not having the fastest car doesn't mean that you can't set the standards high for yourself. After all, the 37-year-old's the master of setting the bar high and then achieving it. Also, you don't just go and win 7 drivers' championships with a defeatist attitude. That being said, in spite of their good run of form lately, Hamilton isn't too sure about getting his hopes up just yet, and according to the British driver, he'd absolutely love to maintain his record and get a win this season, but at the same time, you gotta be realistic while looking at these things. Now, if you remember, most people were backing him to get a race win in Hungary this year. Oh, and it would have made perfect sense too, because in each of his worst F1 seasons, that track has been a boon to him. For instance, even when he had that horrendous car in 2009, he somehow managed to squeeze a victory at the Hungaroring. Likewise, 2013's Hungarian Grand Prix proved lucky once again when he was having a bad time at Mercedes, so all signs did point toward a potential three-peat. But again, Max Verstappen's just inevitable, and despite having a fantastic race weekend, Hamilton had to settle for a P2, which, to be fair, was still quite good. With that said, time is definitely running out for the 7-time world champion as he's gotta find somehow the pace to nab an unlikely race win in just over the next couple months. Not to mention, Red Bull has opened up a massive massive gap at the top. Most people would say that Hungary was perhaps Hamilton's best chance of winning a race this year, and honestly there might be some truth to that, as they're literally running out of Grand Prix this year. We mean, if you look at the calendar, you've got what, 5, 6 races? So of course there's some tension building up within the German team's camp. What's even more fascinating though is that the fact they've actually lost ground against Red Bull since the summer break. Like before Spa, they were inching towards the top spot of the podium and looking stronger with each passing weekend. But it looks like Belgium destroyed all the momentum that they had as the 37-year-old crashed out of the race after colliding with Alonso. As a matter of fact, the last time that he stood on the podium was P2 at Hungaroring, meaning that there's definitely something wrong there. Of course, it's not like his teammates getting race wins or anything, but hey, at least he's finishing in top 3. The biggest issue for Mercedes though is Verstappen's insane run into the back end of the season. We mean, he is dominating the sport right now, and even the brilliant Charles Leclerc can't compete against him in this nippy Ferrari. Besides, Hamilton already admitted that the W13 doesn't have the pace to beat the top 2 teams in the fight, so instead all he can do is hope for the teams to screw up or some rain to even out the playing field. Coming up, are there any tracks left where Hamilton could win? Alright, let's dial back the doom and gloom for a second and look at things from a purely objective standpoint. With time running out for Lewis to register a race win this season, are there any good tracks left on the calendar for him? Now, you might be wondering, what does a good track even mean? Well, you see, the W13 is a bit of a wild card when it comes to performing on any given Grand Prix weekend. Like, the performance varies so much between different tracks that it's almost impossible to judge where it truly lies on the pecking order. For instance, on tracks like Silverstone, we've seen Hamilton outpace the Red Bulls and Ferraris, so you can't write off anything just yet. But if you look closely, all of Mercedes' tracks have one thing in common: an abundance of corners. We mean, the biggest issue is that the Silver Arrows this season have been reducing drag for better straight line speed, and even though they've dealt with the proposing issues, that top speed still leaves much to be desired. As a result, they don't do well on circuits like Spa or Monza. Thankfully, we've still got a bunch of races left where Hamilton could excel or even compete for race wins. Suzuka, for instance, has a ton of curves and chicanes, making it ideal for Mercedes. Other than that, Interlagos is also very similar to Silverstone in terms of its track layout. Oh, and you can't rule out Singapore either, so there's definitely still a chance for the 37-year-old to maintain his record. Finally, can Lewis Hamilton beat the 300 race curse? Now there are a lot of questions looming over the 7-time champion's head. Like, not only has he renewed his deal with Mercedes yet, but it seems like his priorities are also slowly shifting away from the sport. Besides, much like Vettel, he's got bigger and better things to do now. Also for him, there's no point in racing if you're not competing at the absolute top. At the same time though, he's said that he still feels fresh and he can't go until he's 40. But that's where things get a bit tricky. You see, he passed the 300 Grand Prix mark earlier this year, and if you look back at the sport's history, no drivers ever won a race after that point, so it's turned into a bit of a quote-unquote curse for drivers who go on to compete for a long time. Then again, if there's anyone who can defy nature and bring home a race win, it's Sir Lewis Hamilton. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that the Silver Arrows will register a race win this year? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.